She stood in front of everyone, her glass raised in one hand, the other holding her phone, filming me like a sideshow. Her voice rang out just loud enough to sting. "Nice dress, Grandma. Very ... vintage." Everyone laughed. I smiled. I always smile. That moment, the way she looked at me, the way she tossed her hair like she'd won something, it wasn't a joke. It was a message. So I wasn't meant to belong anymore. I'm Evelyn Mears, 74. And that was the moment I knew the inheritance I'd set aside needed to find a new name. Subscribe. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Thanks. The party had been arranged by my daughter-in-law. It's hosted at their newer house, the one with the open kitchen I helped fund. It was a sunny afternoon, the kind that fools you into thinking everything's blooming. My son had picked me up that morning. He barely looked up from his phone the entire drive. Said the girls had something special planned. It was a birthday. Not a coronation, but they made it sound like I should feel royal. I wore my favorite mauve dress. It used to be my late husband's favorite too. The hem sits just at the ankle. Soft pleats, silk collar, nothing fancy. It's just something that made me feel like myself. She laughed again. Later, when I asked for a picture with all 3 grandkids, I hadn't realized she'd captioned the photo on her story. 3 generations and 1 ghost. My granddaughter's friends thought it was hilarious. She leaned in, whispered something to her boyfriend, a boy with loose jeans and too much cologne, and they snickered as I adjusted my hair. I don't cry in public. Not because I'm strong, but because I learned young how silence gives you dignity. I waited until I was alone in the guest room, after the cake, after the wine. After the 100th time someone told me I looked good for my age, I sat on the edge of the bed with the lace duvet and stared at the thank you gift she'd left there, a pink candle and a card that read, "For the woman who taught us how to age with grace." I don't remember teaching her that. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing. You don't wake up one day and find yourself discarded. It happens slowly, subtle corrections. Being left out of group chats. Having your suggestions dismissed. With a soft, "Oh, Grandma, we don't do it like that anymore." A year ago, I offered to make my bread pudding for her birthday. She told me the oven made the house smell weird, so they ordered cupcakes instead. But this time, the dress, the caption, the candle this time, it wasn't just exclusion. It was cruelty dressed as performance. There's a difference. Later that night, I lay in bed listening to the laughter downstairs. My name never came up. Not once. I knew because I listened. That's the thing about growing old in a house that used to be yours. You learn to recognize your absence in the room. It's louder than any presence. I didn't say a word the next morning. I hugged her goodbye, told her she looked lovely, and that her presentation in history class would go well. She didn't hug me back, just said thanks, in that distracted tone teenagers use when they're already done with you. My son carried my suitcase to the front step. Didn't ask if I enjoyed myself. Just said he'd have someone take me home because he had an early meeting. I told him not to worry. I'd booked a car. That surprised him. I saw it flicker across his face. The driver arrived, a woman named Lee. She was quiet, kind, didn't ask too many questions. I stared out the window the whole way back. The trees looked like they were shedding something I couldn't name. Home, I placed the candle on the kitchen table. Smelled like coconut and regret. Then I opened my safe, pulled out the green binder, and laid it flat. Inside, the trust, the will, the copies of deeds, the names. I traced my granddaughter's name with my finger. Then I reached for a pen. I was 22 when I gave birth to my son. I remember the cracked ceiling in the hospital room more than the pain itself. He came into the world quiet. Didn't cry, just blinked up at me like he already had questions. I named him Daniel. My husband held him like a fragile blueprint for a future he wasn't sure he knew how to build. But I did. I always did. We didn't have much back then. A rented apartment above a laundromat, 2 jobs between us, no car. But there was something sacred in how we managed. I learned to stretch $1 into a meal and a lullaby into sleep. Daniel grew tall early. He had the kind of face people trusted. I used to run my fingers through his hair while he read on the couch. I'd think, this boy, this gentle boy, will never forget me. When my husband died suddenly, stroke. Middle of the night, no warning. Daniel was 24. He flew home from graduate school, held my hand in the funeral parlor, and promised I'd never be alone. I believed him. Not because I was naive, but because he'd never lied before. I downsized that year, sold the big house, moved into a smaller one-bedroom near the park. Daniel helped with the paperwork. He said it made more sense. Less to clean, less to maintain. But when I looked at the closing documents later, I realized my name was only partial. Joint ownership. Him and me. I let it slide. I was tired. Grief does that. Makes you miss the small things that later grow teeth. Then came his wife, Erica Sharp. Efficient, good at organizing people into categories. She smiled at me a lot, but it rarely reached her eyes. Called me Evelyn instead of Mom. Said it felt more modern that way. I told myself she was just trying to find her footing. After all, the first year of marriage is hard. I remember mine. They moved into a larger place after their first child. I gave them the down payment. I told Daniel not to worry about paying it back just to keep a room ready for me. He said always. Erica smiled and said, of course. But that room slowly turned into a storage space. Then a guest room, then a makeshift office. My clothes were packed into plastic tubs in the garage. I started giving generously. Birthdays, anniversaries, school events. I paid for piano lessons, orthodontics, even the fence around the backyard pool. It's made me feel included, I suppose. Like I still mattered. I didn't want to be one of those mothers who clung to her son like a vine. I kept my visits short, my comments shorter. I'd read enough self-help books to know boundaries were important, but it always felt like their lines moved further away while mine stayed fixed. My granddaughter Anna was my only girl in the mix of all their boys. She was soft when she was young, used to curl up next to me during thunderstorms and ask if I was ever afraid. I told her no, but that wasn't true. I've always been afraid of being forgotten. She used to draw me cards, stick figures with gray curls and hearts on the edges. She called me her fairy grandmother, said I had magic in my eyes. I kept every card, still do, but something shifted when she turned 14. She began speaking in half sentences, rolling her eyes, correcting me when I mispronounced things. Social media became her diary. Her friends became her family. I became a background noise. I tried to stay relevant, brought her vintage necklaces, told her stories about my own mother. But she looked at me like I was made of dust. The last holiday we spent together before the birthday. I remember I brought a pie I'd baked myself. My crust is known to be flaky and golden. She looked at it and said, "We don't really do gluten anymore." I laughed, thinking she was teasing. No one touched it. Not even Daniel. I watched them eat their catered meal. Vegan dishes with unfamiliar names, served on expensive plates I recognized from a catalog I once gifted them. No one asked if I wanted tea. I drank water from a paper cup. When they dropped me home that night, Anna stayed in the car. I tapped on the window to say goodbye. She looked up from her phone and waved with her fingers, her eyes still on the screen. It felt like waving at someone through glass. You see them, but the warmth doesn't come through. It's strange how the small dismissals build into something permanent. I don't think they meant to erase me. I think they just stopped seeing me. Familiarity becomes invisibility. It happens slow. Like erosion. By the time you notice, you've already disappeared. I spent the winter quietly, sorted papers, donated clothes, started keeping a notebook of everything I'd contributed. Not out of resentment, but record. I believe in having a trail, not for them, for me. So I could remember that I gave, that I mattered. Anna turned 18 last spring. I sent her a small pearl pendant that once belonged to my grandmother. I never saw it on her. A few weeks later, I saw it listed on her social. Media profile available for resale. She'd captioned it, "Vintage charm never worn. Make an offer." I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't the money, it was the message. I didn't belong to her past, her present, or her future. I stopped offering after that, the binder. Sat on my kitchen table for a week before I opened it again. Kept dusting around it, pretending it didn't call to me. But it did. Late at night, when the house was silent and the ache of that birthday party returned like a low fever, I'd sit at the table and rest my hand on its cover. The green leather felt cold. It's like something that used to be alive. Inside were copies of the trust documents. Property deeds and bank accounts, everything I had once organized with the quiet hope that it would outlive me, serve them, protect. Them, I used to think planning ahead was love. Now, I wasn't so sure. It started with a letter. A bank statement came in showing a withdrawal I hadn't made. Wasn't theft. It was transfer, subtle, disguised as routine. The account was in my name, but access had been shared with Daniel years ago for convenience. At least that's what I told myself, convenience. The quiet erosion of boundaries. I called the bank. They verified the login came from Daniel's home computer. The funds had been rerouted to an account in Erica's name. I didn't say anything, not right away. I just hung up the phone and stared at the empty coffee cup in front of me. I couldn't even remember drinking it. A week later, a friend from church, Margaret, asked me if I was moving. I blinked. No. I said, "Why?" She said she saw the listing online. My home. My home was listed. It wasn't under my name, of course. The title had been quietly shifted 2 years prior. I remembered signing something Daniel had brought over during tax season. He said it was just a restructuring. He used words like liability and estate protection. I nodded. Signed, trusted now. It was listed as a potential rental. Short-term, furnished, photos of my bedroom, my armchair. My kitchen table with the green binder still sitting in the background. I felt something fall inside me. A thread, pulled too tight for too long, had finally snapped. I didn't call them. I didn't rage. I just sat very still for a long time and let the silence fill the room. That evening, Anna posted a picture of herself in my garden. The caption said, "Last. Summer here, gonna miss the vibes." It had 3 heart emojis. The comments were full of her friends asking where she was headed next. She replied that her parents had plans for the old place. She was finally getting a room that didn't smell like mothballs. That room, the one where I had kept her baby books. The quilt I made when she was 6. The one she used to ask for every time she had a fever. I suppose it smells different now. Later that night, I found a folder in Daniel's name on the shared family cloud drive. It hadn't been locked. Inside were scanned documents. My will, the trust, notes titled Amendment Proposal. There were scribbles, Erica's handwriting, suggestions on how to optimize the distribution. Her words, not mine, Anna's. Name had a comment next to it. Said, "Remove, if she continues this phase." I don't know what phase she meant. Perhaps it was the version of Anna who used to sit on my lap, braid my hair with clumsy fingers, and ask if ghosts had grandmothers. I stared at that comment for a long time. Not because it shocked me, but because it clarified something I had been pretending not to see. I was no longer seen as a person. I had become a category, an asset. A file to edit. The betrayal wasn't in the money. It was in the silence. The soft way they moved pieces behind my back and smiled when I visited. The way they let me bring cookies to a home they were preparing to rent out from under me. The way they filmed me at my own birthday wearing a dress I loved, Kay, and turned me into content. It's not easy to say your own child betrayed you. It's easier to say you misunderstood, that you missed something, that maybe you weren't modern enough, tech-savvy enough, needed too much. But betrayal doesn't always arrive in the form of a scream or a slammed door. Sometimes it comes in the form of a shared login, a signed document, a caption. The next morning, I made a list, call the bank and remove shared access. Secure all hard. Copies of my documents, schedule a meeting with a lawyer, find a place to stay for a while, somewhere temporary, quiet. I didn't know exactly what I would do with the trust yet. But I knew one thing for certain. Anna's name, the one I had added myself in blue ink. The day she turned 16 would be the first to go. I opened the green binder and turned to the page. Her name was still there. Delicate. Hopeful. Right? Below the line that read, to be held in full until the age of 20-5. She had just turned 18. There was time. I used to believe loyalty meant endurance. That if you stayed silent long enough, people would come back around, realize your worth. But silence doesn't teach lessons, simply makes you easier to ignore. The morning after I found those files, I sat in the kitchen with the blinds half closed, and the radio turned low. A jazz station. No lyrics, just sound. I needed something without words. My thoughts already had too many of those. The green binder was open in front of me, but I didn't touch it. I just stared. I had spent years trying to make sure they would be cared for when I was gone. That everything I earned and saved would stretch forward in their lives like a quiet promise. But what about me while I'm still here? I got up slowly and went to the hallway closet. I reached for the shoebox marked Mortgage minus 2005, the one no one had touched in years. Inside, beneath old statements and yellowed receipts, was a copy of the original trust draft. The one my lawyer and I created before Daniel ever knew. The word estate planning, back when my decisions were still mine. I ran my fingers across my own signature. The ink had faded a little, but the promise in it hadn't. That afternoon, I went to the town library. They still have computers in the back for people like me, no login required, just a library card and a bit of patience. I searched for estate lawyers in the area, the kind that specialized in elder protections. I wasn't sure what I was looking for at first, but I knew what I wasn't looking for anymore. A family who treated me like a forgotten drawer in a rented. ROOM, I made an appointment with a firm I had never used before. Neutral ground, fresh eyes. The receptionist called me Miss Mears and asked if I preferred coffee or tea. I chose tea, a peppermint. The little things mattered now. The lawyer was a woman, mid-40s, sharp eyes, but kind. She didn't talk down to me. She let me explain things at my own pace. Told her everything. The withdrawals, the shared access, the property. The files I wasn't meant to see. She didn't interrupt. Just nodded, took notes, and finally said, "You've been generous. Now let's make sure you're protected." That sentence stayed with me. I walked home that evening with a folder of new paperwork, a fresh copy of my will draft, and a quiet clarity I hadn't felt in years. At home, I made myself a small dinner. Just lentils and toast. I sat by the window, lights off, watching the neighbors come and go. The air smelled like late summer, grass and evening. Somewhere down the road, children were riding bicycles, their laughter drifting in bursts. I tried to remember the last time Anna had laughed like that around me. I couldn't. I opened my notebook, the one I'd started last winter, added a new entry. August 14th today. I chose to stop waiting for them to see me. I saw myself instead. I looked around the room and noticed how quiet it was. Not empty, just still. For once, the silence didn't feel like absence. It felt like space, space to make decisions. I pulled out the envelope where I kept old keys. There was one labeled storage unit, Jefferson St. C. I hadn't used it in years. But I remembered what was there. My husband's box of journals, few pieces of furniture from the old house, and a trunk full of photo albums I hadn't touched since the kids stopped asking about the past. The next day, I visited the unit. The air was stale but familiar, like memory held its breath in there. I opened the trunk. Inside were pictures of birthdays, beach trips, Sunday lunches. Daniel, as a toddler, missing a shoe. Anna at 6, holding a kitten I brought her. Me, in a yellow blouse, laughing at something no one remembers. I ran my fingers along the edges of each photo. None of them knew what was coming. That time would turn faces cold. That laughter would become leverage. That generosity would be met with edits and erasure. I took 3 albums with me. The rest I left, for now. Some memories should stay tucked away until you're strong enough to look them in the eye. Back home, I began sorting through the photos. Not to relive anything, just to decide what was still mine. I made a pile. Photos that felt like truth. Ones that reminded me who I was before I became background noise. I found one of Anna and me. She was maybe 9. We were sitting under a tree in the old backyard. She was braiding my hair and laughing so hard her eyes were closed. That girl loved me. That version of her did. I kept that one, slid it into the back of my notebook. Not as a keepsake, but a boundary, to remind myself of where we once were and how far we've drifted. That night, I locked the green binder away, replaced it with the new folder, labeled it personal. Just nothing more. I didn't call Daniel, didn't send a message. I just started living in the truth I had ignored for too long. They were no longer my caretakers in waiting. They were witnesses to my departure. And I was finally making my exit. I didn't tell anyone I was leaving, not because I wanted it to be dramatic, but because I didn't want the noise. I'd had enough of noise that didn't mean anything, the empty kind. It's full of greetings that didn't carry warmth, apologies that never arrived, and promises made only to justify withdrawals. I started small. I canceled the house cleaning, service Erica had recommended years ago. I never really liked the woman she sent. Always too rushed, too loud, too curious. I donated half my clothes to the church thrift shop and packed only what I needed in 2 modest suitcases. One for essentials, the other for memory. The motel I checked into wasn't far, just 2 towns over, but it was far enough to be quiet. It's tucked behind a gas station with a crooked sign that blinked vacancy in tired red neon. The front desk man barely looked up. He handed me a key. A real key, not a card. That felt right. Something about using a real key made it feel like I was still part of the world. Room 207. No view, no artwork. It's just a narrow bed with a floral cover, a desk, and a chair that creaked. But it was mine. No one else's name on the deed. No one else telling me where to sit, how long to stay, what I could bring. I sat at the desk and opened my notebook. August 21st, left quietly. No forwarding address. They'll notice eventually. I'm not angry. I'm just done. I spent the next day at the courthouse filing the paperwork with the lawyer's help. We revoked shared access, amended the trust, transferred control of the remaining assets into a private account only I could access. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. A form of peace they could no longer rewrite. Anna's name came off first. I crossed it out myself. The pen didn't hesitate. I thought it would hurt more than it did. But it didn't, because I wasn't punishing her. I was freeing myself. Daniel's name came next. That part took a little longer. I had to pause between strokes. I remembered the sound of his voice when he was 8, asking if I thought clouds ever got tired of floating. I remembered tying his shoes with hands that worked longer hours than I ever admitted. I remembered carrying him when I was the one who needed to be held. But love can't survive on memory alone. He had made a choice. A series of them, really? Small, quiet choices that said, "You're only important when convenient." I heard him loud and clear. By the time I left the office, it had started raining. Light drops that dotted the pavement like small apologies. I didn't run. I let them touch me. Back at the motel, I made tea from the little bag I brought, sat at the desk, turned on the small lamp, and breathed. It had been years since I made a decision without asking anyone else first. I didn't feel powerful. I just felt clean. Like someone had finally cracked a window in a room that had gone stale long ago. There were voicemails on my phone. 3 from Daniel, 2 from Erica. 1 from Anna. I didn't listen to them. I just noted the times. I knew what they said without hearing the words. Where are you? We didn't mean it like that. You're being overdramatic. Let's talk had always been their favorite defense. Talk, but never listen. talk, but only when they needed something. I turned the phone off and slid it into the drawer. That night, I dreamt I was standing on the edge of a cliff. Not afraid, not falling, just watching the wind push through the trees below. Okay? A soft, rustling choir of things letting go. I woke up without grief. The next morning, I opened a new bank account, bought a new journal, rented a post office box in a different name, Evelyn Carson. My middle name, my maiden name. I hadn't seen it in print in decades, but it fit, like something that had waited patiently to be remembered. At the motel, I pinned a photo of myself to the corkboard above. The desk. Just me. No family in the frame. I must have been 30, smiling in the garden, hair pinned up, sleeves rolled. There was dirt under my nails and sun on my face. That woman knew who she was? I stared at her for a long time. Then I whispered, "I'm sorry I left you behind, but I'm back now." I didn't expect the panic to come so quickly. 3 days after I filed the trust amendment, Daniel showed up at my old house. The one they had planned to list, only now the lockbox code didn't work. The real estate agent called me, not Daniel, to ask why access had been revoked. I told her calmly that the home was no longer available for rent. She hesitated, apologized, and hung up that evening. I checked the motel's Wi-Fi and logged into the family group chat I hadn't visited in weeks. 76 unread messages. They had been spiraling. Where is she? Does anyone know where Mom went? She's not answering. Did she change the account password? Call the lawyer. What the hell is happening? Eureka's messages were cold and surgical. Things like, "This is going to affect the tax deferments." And "She's acting unstable. We may need to step in legally." Daniel's tone was different. I could hear the panic. The disbelief that I had taken action, that I was capable of closing doors they thought I had left unlocked for good. But it was Anna's message that made me sit still for the longest. She posted a photo of the green dress. Mine. The one I wore at the birthday. The caption said, "Can't believe this is what she got mad about. It's literally just a dress." So extra, there were laughing emojis underneath. A friend responded, "Old people are so sensitive, lol." Anna replied, "She was always fragile. It's just good at hiding it." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I read the words like someone reviewing a weather report. Storm coming. Noted they still didn't understand. Was never about the dress. It was about the way they erased me in plain sight. Turned my love into a burden. My presence into a problem. The phone rang a few hours later. It was Daniel. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Mom, please. What is this? You're scaring everyone. You've always said family sticks together. You raised me to believe that. So why are you cutting us off? Why are you doing this now?" I replayed that line in my head. Why are you doing this now? As if time were the problem. Not the years of being. Slowly pushed out of my own story. As if I hadn't waited long enough for someone to notice I'd stopped laughing. The next morning, walked into town and bought a new phone under a different plan. I gave the number to no one. Not even Margaret at church, though she had called twice, leaving sweet messages wondering if I was all right. I would respond eventually, but not yet. I stopped checking the family chat after that. But the emails came next. A request for a meeting. An invitation to a family dinner. A note from Erica saying that the children were worried and that this was beginning to feel irresponsible. Irresponsible. That word made me pause. All those years I fed them, housed them, protected them, and died a little more each time I was spoken over. And now, in my small silence, I had become irresponsible. It's interesting how quiet women are tolerated until their silence starts costing something. I deleted the emails without replying. 2 days later, Erica left a voicemail. Her voice was clipped, brittle. "You've made your point. If this is about the trust, we can revisit the terms. But ghosting your family? That's not what Grandma would have wanted." That made me laugh. Small, sharp sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. They had turned me into a memory while I was still breathing. A mourned version of me they had edited to fit there. Comfort. Now that I was real again, difficult, silent, independent, I was unacceptable. They tried one more thing. On a Monday morning, received a notification that Daniel had tried to log in to one of the joint savings accounts. The one I had closed, he had entered the wrong credentials 3 times. The bank locked the access and sent me a confirmation. I called immediately and asked them to make a note that I was the sole holder now, with no shared access. The woman on the other end of the line said, "Of course, Mrs. Carson, we have you fully secured." I almost wept at that. Not because of the money, but because someone, even a stranger, had finally said the words, "fully secured," that evening. I sat by the motel window with my tea, watching the cars pass on the highway, taillights blinking in the dusk. I felt no guilt, only a strange, bittersweet quiet. Like the silence after a storm, the fallout was happening exactly as I expected. Not loud, but persistent. Like a toothache that gets worse once you stop numbing it. I knew they'd keep trying, not because they missed me, but because control is louder when it's slipping. They weren't mourning my absence. They were reacting to my refusal, but the door was shut now, locked, and the key was in my hand. The motel room became something else after the first week. Not just a hiding place, not an escape, a cocoon, a pause between two selves. I woke early. Most mornings not out of habit, but because there was something about the quiet at 6 a.m. that made me feel like the world hadn't formed its expectations yet. I'd sit at the desk, sip lukewarm tea, and watch the sky through the half-closed blinds. I didn't check my phone. I didn't read the news. I didn't scroll. One morning, the woman at the front desk offered me a pastry when I came in to pay for another week. She said she had picked up extras from a bakery downtown. I told her, "Thank you." She said, "You always carry yourself like someone who remembers things the rest of us forgot." I didn't ask her what that meant. Just nodded, took the pastry. It was apple cinnamon. Warm, a kindness with no transaction behind it. I started walking. Every day, just small loops around the area. A park a few blocks away had a duck pond and 3 benches. I always chose the one under the tree. It didn't wobble like the others. That's where I met Josie. She wore oversized sunglasses and always brought a bag of birdseed. She talked to the ducks like they were her cousins. Said she'd been coming here since her husband passed 5 years ago. I told her I was just passing through. She looked at me and said, "You've got the look of someone reclaiming herself." That's not the same as running. We started meeting at that bench most mornings. She told me about her grandkids, only one of whom still called. I told her about Anna, not everything, just enough. She said, "They'll come back when they think you've softened." Said, "Maybe, but by then I might not want the noise." Sometimes silence is safer than forgiveness. In the afternoons, I started drawing again. Nothing grand, just shapes, lines, the occasional face. I used to draw when Daniel was little. He'd sit beside me and copy my birds and boats. I stopped. Once homework and real life took over. But now, with no one asking me to do anything, I found my fingers moving again. The lines came slow, but they felt like mine. One evening, I brought my drawings to the diner down the street. They had a corkboard near the register that said "Art from Locals." I asked the cashier if I could pin one up. He smiled and said, "Of course, pick your spot." I chose the middle. It stayed there for 2 days before someone wrote a note next. To it, beautiful lines. Feels like silence turned into something visible. That's all it said. I saved the note. There's something sacred in being seen by strangers, especially when your family has gone blind to you. Josie introduced me to a local bookshop run by a woman named Clarissa. She was in her 60s, wore shawls no matter the weather, and spoke in a soft, deliberate tone that made you lean in. I started helping there in the afternoons, sorting shelves, writing notes for the staff pick section. Clarissa said I had the kind of handwriting people trusted. She didn't ask about my past, gave me space to be useful again. She once asked what I missed most. I told her. Being asked what I thought and then being listened to like the answer mattered. She nodded, said, "That's not small. That's everything." There were still hard moments, nights when I woke up wondering if Daniel was thinking of me. If Anna looked for my number and paused before deleting it again. If Erica told herself a version of the story where she was blameless, but those nights became fewer. I stopped needing to be right in their eyes. I just needed to be real in mine. One Sunday, Josie brought a small pot of daisies to the motel, said, "Your room needs a reminder that something can grow even here." I placed it on the desk next to my notebook. That day I wrote, "September 9th, they're not coming to find me, and that's okay. I think I found someone better, myself." I took a walk that evening to the edge of town. The sun was low, making everything look gold and forgiving. I sat on a bench and watched a child help her grandmother tie her shoe. It was a small, clumsy act, but it felt like grace. I didn't envy the woman. I didn't grieve what I never received. I just smiled. Sometimes peace doesn't arrive like a sunrise. Sometimes it slips in like a soft breath at the end of a long sentence. That night, I lit a candle. It's the same one Anna gave me on my birthday. It's the one I had wanted to throw away. I let it burn down slowly, not as a ritual, not as revenge, just as a release. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address. But the handwriting was Daniel's, slanted left, pressed too hard. It looked like he had written it in a rush, or maybe in frustration. The envelope was plain. No card inside. Just 3 pages of lined paper, folded neatly. I sat on the motel bed, turned off the fan, opened it. It began with Mom, not Evelyn, not Mother. Just Mom, as if saying the word could reopen a door that had quietly closed. He said he didn't know where I was, but he hoped I was safe. That the kids missed me, especially Anna. That Erica wanted to apologize for how things had been handled, though, he added. She still felt misunderstood. Then he started listing things, like it was a defense. "You helped us so much. You were overwhelmed. We didn't think you minded. You never said anything. You were always so composed." That word again, composed. As if silence is consent. As if grace is an agreement. He wrote that. The trust was never about control. That they only updated documents to secure the family's future, and that Anna didn't mean what she said, that she's a teenager, that she doesn't understand what those words did to me. Then came the part I had expected. "Please come back. Let's talk this through. We're still a family." Still. As if family is a status you can hold on to while rewriting its meaning in your favor. As if I should be grateful the title hadn't been revoked. There was no apology in the letter. Just the shape of one. An outline where remorse should have lived. I folded it quietly and placed it in the drawer beside the peppermint tea and extra pens. Later that afternoon, walked to the bookstore. Clarissa noticed something in my face, I think. She didn't ask. Just handed me a book with a blue cover and said, "This one waits until the end to tell the truth. I think you'll like it." That evening I lit the candle again. Watched the flame curve and dip as the air moved. Then I opened my notebook. September 16th he reached out, but not to listen. Just to reset the silence in his favor. I won't step back into the room just to be erased again. 2 days passed, then came the knock. I heard it while sorting books in the back of the shop. Clarissa came to the doorway and said, "There's someone asking for you." "A man?" I stepped out slowly, wiping my hands on a cloth. And there he was, Daniel, older than I remembered. Maybe because I hadn't seen his face without a screen in between for so long. He looked tired. He smiled in that tentative way. The way people smile when they know they've broken something they don't know how to fix. "Hi, Mom." I said nothing, just tilted my head, waited. He stepped closer, but not too close. I didn't move. "I've been looking for you." His voice cracked. "You just disappeared." "I didn't disappear." I said it softly. "You stopped looking long before I left." He sighed. The back of his neck made mistakes. You made decisions, I said. Deliberate ones. He nodded. I did. I thought I was helping. I don't know what I thought. I stayed quiet. Anna, sorry. Erica, too. They both. They were stupid about the dress. The party. All of it. It wasn't about the dress. I know. I know. He looked at the bookstore shelves like he was trying to understand who I had become. We want you back. I stepped toward him. Once. I'm not coming back to a house where I was treated like a liability, where kindness had terms. Where? Silence was mistaken for agreement. He flinched just a little. I'm not angry, I continued, but I've rebuilt something now. Not a life exactly. Not yet, but space. Space that doesn't punish me for existing. He looked like he wanted to say something else. Maybe argue, maybe defend, but he didn't. He just lowered his eyes. Is there anything you need? I almost laughed for the first time in years. I don't. Need anything from you? I walked him to the door at the threshold. He turned and said, I miss you. I nodded. I miss who you used to be. Then I closed the door. Not with force, just, finally, that evening. Josie and I sat on the bench under the tree. She handed me a thermos of tea. You okay? I nodded. That was the goodbye, I think. Not the loud kind. The real kind. The motel room is still and quiet tonight. It's a kind of stillness that feels earned. No calls, no knocks. No footsteps passing by the door. The hum of the mini fridge and the faint rustle of tree branches brushing the window pane. I'm sitting at the desk with my notebook open and a half-burnt candle flickering to the left of me. The flame leans toward the glass, like it's tired too. Think I'm ready now. Not to explain, but to release. There's a difference between healing and returning. I used to think I could only be whole again if I patched things back together. If I just stayed long enough, gave enough, forgave enough. But some things aren't meant to be mended. Some are meant to be let go gently, silently, without ceremony. I've stopped checking the family chat. I haven't opened another letter. I don't scroll through their lives. I don't measure mine against theirs. I live where I no longer do, and I've stopped carrying a key that unlocks rooms I was never welcome in. There's no revenge in this. No fire left to throw. It's only a quiet clearing. A kind of peace that comes when you stop trying to be recognized by the ones who've already made up their mind about your worth. The trust has been redrawn. The house is off the market. The bank accounts are under my name and mine alone. I wrote a new will last week. Shorter, simpler. I named Clarissa as executor. She was surprised, but honored. I told her she was the first person in years who listened without waiting to correct me. I left a note for Josie, too, in case anything ever happens. I told her where the spare key is and that the potted daisy on the desk should be planted somewhere the sun doesn't give up. She smiled when she read it and said, "That's the most poetic goodbye I've ever read from someone still living. I've started volunteering twice a week at the community center. I read 2 children after school. I don't tell them about Anna. I just bring stories and sit cross-legged with them on the carpet. One little girl, her name is Malia, always asks if I can draw the characters after I read. I do. She calls it grandma magic. I don't correct her. I let her believe I'm someone wonderful. Some days are still quiet in a sad way. I won't lie. I sometimes wonder what Daniel thinks now, sitting in that house I helped pay for, walking through hallways that used to carry the sound of my footsteps too. Maybe he still checks his inbox, hoping I'll write back. Maybe he's moved on, or maybe he's finally learning what absence really feels like. Not loud, not angry, just complete dot. As for Anna, I haven't seen her since the party. I don't know if she ever realized what it meant for her name to be removed. I doubt she even noticed the change. But one day, maybe when she's older and the world hasn't bent in her favor, she might remember the woman in the green dress, the one she mocked in front of friends like an afterthought. Maybe she wondered what it cost her, or maybe not. Either way, it's no longer my weight to carry. This new life, it's not grand. It's not the kind people post about. but it's mine. Entirely mine. I wake when I want. I walk where I please. I buy flowers without asking anyone if they'll wilt too fast. I make tea and let it steep too long. I draw, I read. I exist without explanation. That, more than anything, feels like a kind of quiet revenge. The best kind, the one rooted in freedom. I haven't decided where I'll go next. The motel has been good to me, but I feel a shift coming. Maybe I'll rent a small cottage near the sea, somewhere with a porch and an old rocking chair. Maybe I'll find a place with creaky floors and a stubborn garden, a place that doesn't need permission to bloom. I've thought about writing a letter to myself, the woman I used to be, the one who waited by the phone for calls that never came, who made birthday cakes that went uneaten, who wore silence like armor. But I think she already knows. She's here now, sitting beside me in the same chair. We made it out together. This is the end of the story they don't get to rewrite. The chapter they won't be invited to edit. I tell it now, not for applause or validation, but for truth. The kind that stays steady, even when no one claps. The candle is almost out. The wax has pooled. There's just a little left. Enough to light the last word. I'm going to press the pen against the page now and close this notebook for good. This time, I decide who gets to call me anything else. The end.